Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
It is one of those rare days of Cut the Clutter when we talk about not one but three different issues. And I promise you, cricket is not one of them. And that's not because we lost the match. We have three other very important things to talk about. And I'll tell you which three. Number one, there is this phone call between Narendra Modi, our Prime Minister, and Joe Biden, the new American president. And you can see that there was some speculation going on that the phone call hasn't happened. Why has it taken so long? The phone call took place late last night, our time. So, what does that phone call tell us? That's very important. Second, the WHO team of experts in China has finished their visit where they had gone to investigate what led to the spread of the virus and whether it escaped from a lab, etc., or were the Chinese fully cooperating with the rest of the world, or are the Chinese hiding anything? So that committee had its press conference. In fact, one of the reasons we got a bit late today with Cut the Clutter is that we waited for that press conference to happen, and that press conference got delayed by 2 hours. So we talk about what they have come up with. And the third thing we talk about is some very interesting things that happened in National Parliament today. Because, it's one of the unfortunate things about India that our parliament doesn't meet enough. And even when it meets, it doesn't talk enough. Mostly it is mara-mari, protests, jumping into the well. But old-fashioned repartee, old-fashioned arguments, old-fashioned sort of speech-making, etc. have been rare, increasingly rare in our parliament. So today was one of those when you saw a lot of that. So that is the third thing. So first of all, this phone call. Now, there was a bit of speculation and some particularly among those who don't like Narendra Modi, that how come Biden had not called Narendra Modi yet? Biden had called many other heads of state already. Now we know that US Secretary of Defense had called his counterpart, that is Rajnath Singh. US Secretary of State had called his counterpart, which is Jaishankar at our end. The new American National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, had also called his counterpart here, Ajit Doval, but not the chief executives. Now that happened last night. Now, first of all, let me answer the question, did it take too long for this call to happen, and does it show that Biden does not give Modi or India the same priority or same precedence that Trump might have given? So see, and you will see on the screen the list of countries that Biden called, whose heads Biden called one by one. He calls his two neighbors, that is Trudeau in Canada and Obrador in Mexico. Then he calls his key Western allies in Europe, that is Boris Johnson, Angela Merkel, Macron, then Stoltenberg, who represents the entire European group. So that is a bulk of the 47 treaty-bound allies. Then at number 7, he calls Vladimir Putin, an adversary, but a country with which America has a vital relationship, and America also needs to keep talking to that country to keep balance, since the new Cold War has already begun. So nobody can grudge that call to Putin. And one important thing came out of that call also, and that also tells us why that call was important and urgent for Joe Biden, because in that call, Joe Biden said that he intended to continue on with the arrangements under the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, or START as it's called, because Trump had boasted often that he's going to walk out of it. So that was to comfort Putin and also to pour oil over those troubled waters, because you don't want pangas on all sides at the same time. Then other treaty-bound allies were called, that is Japan, Australia, South Korea. And by the time South Korea was called, people started to say, a lot of the people in India, particularly in our strategic community and our strategic commentariat, that how come he's even called the leader of South Korea but not the leader of India? What kind of an ally is he? And what is the meaning of Quad now? And then this call happened. But once again, if you see this list, you will see a logic. First, the two next door neighbors in North America, then the key treaty bound allies in Europe, then Vladimir Putin, then treaty bound allies in generally the Quad region, that is Australia, Japan, and then India. So, among non treaty bound allies, India is the first country whose leader has been called by Joe Biden. So, this call finishes that speculation. So far, so good. Now, the interesting thing is you read the two readouts of the calls. The good thing these days is that when top leaders meet, particularly with America, they issue readouts, means summaries of what they discussed. If you see the two readouts, and we'll share both with you on the screen from the White House, and from New Delhi, you will find some interesting differences, not in detail, but differences in approach. So if you see the Delhi readout, it begins by saying that both leaders talked about their strategic partnership, about enriching it or strengthening it or something like that. And then it goes on to say freedom of navigation, etc., in Indo-Pacific, security Indo-Pacific, then territorial integrity of the region. After that, it comes into joint work on COVID, etc., etc. These are very short readouts. You can read them. If you see on the other hand, the American readout, that is quite different in emphasis. It begins by two leaders discussing cooperation on COVID, so that is like the headline point. Then on restoring global economic growth after the pandemic, etc., etc. It is towards the latter half of this very short readout that there is a mention of some strategic relationships and strategic interests. It does not talk of a strategic partnership. It says, however, that both countries will work together to maintain peace or an order based on rules and laws in the Indo-Pacific, which is a good thing. And then it also says that it also underlines the commitment to territorial integrity. If you see a story by Nainima Basu, who's our diplomatic editor, she makes this point quite carefully, that it looks like the two leaders agreed on many things, but they also had slight subtle disagreement over the detail on some issues. For example, Biden's readout talks about his commitment to spreading democratization. Indian readout does not mention that, and you can guess what is the reason, because that might be seen in India as an indication that Biden will not be as uninterested in what happens by way of domestic policy, domestic social cohesion, the state of democracy, democratic rights, freedom of speech in India as Trump might have been. Early days, but these are differences that we can see. So I will conclude this point here and come to WHO. Now, WHO had this long press conference, and the very fact that they delayed it by a couple of hours gave you the sense that it was as if the two sides, in this case WHO and the Chinese experts team, were comparing notes or arriving at some common lines to speak. So somehow it did not sound right. And if I may say so, this press conference and what WHO has said, they will come up with a formal, proper, detailed report in the course of time. But what they said was a case of something for which I don't have an English equivalent, but really, khoda pahad aur nikla chuha, wo bhi mara hua, right? And in the context of the spread of COVID, I should not even say chuha, because one of the prime suspects has been exotic animals who are not normally a part of the food chain. Now, what is it that these investigators have said? They've said, first of all, and that is the headline point, they've said that we don't believe there is nothing in the evidence to suggest that this virus escaped from the lab, because the big virology lab of China is in Wuhan. And it is a scientist from that lab who has been questioned in the past globally, and she was questioned by this WHO group also. So they say we've checked all the samples taken at various points of time. We are quite sure that we have no indication that the virus has escaped from the lab. Remember, that is something that Trump administration has been saying, not just insinuating, but they've been saying that. In fact, the State Department, almost on the last day of the Trump presidency, released documents or released a statement saying precisely this, that the virus escaped from this lab in Wuhan. We had in fact done a full cut the clutter on that. I will share that link with you also. So this committee says that based on the scientific information they've been able to collect, it's extremely unlikely that any evidence that they have is going to explain or bring about some kind of understanding that this is a virus that escaped from the lab. And they say that after this study, we don't even think that any further study is needed. Now, that is something that will be greeted with a great deal of relief by the Chinese, but skepticism across the world. Now, the reason there will be skepticism is that WHO itself does not have clean hands. Because remember, on 14th of January last year, WHO had issued this tweet where they said that there is no evidence of human-to-human transmission. Now, this WHO finding committee, they say the first cases from there surfaced on 14th of December. They say the first cases identified from Wuhan are from 8th December onwards. So, it's possible that this virus did not originate or did not first escape from the market, but maybe it was somewhere else and from there it came into the market. So this further muddies the waters instead of clarifying things. So here are the 4 elements that this group said they investigated. Number 1, they said, could it have come from wildlife to people? Number 2, could it have come via intermediate hosts, which could be a pangolin, which could be a bat? Those have been talked about, and I will come to that in a bit. Third, could it have come via cold chain products? Cold chain products is frozen meat, etc., which is imported or exported between countries. So that would look like the best alibi for China, and given a choice, the Chinese, I suspect today, would like to blame Australians for it. And then they say number 4 is lab incident. So lab incident, they're mostly ruling out but not fully ruling out. So once again, it's a situation where those who want to believe it will believe it. Those who don't want to believe WHO will not believe WHO, because WHO's credibility has not been restored yet. So we have a lot of these summaries from a series of tweets by a scientist called Peter Daszak, who was part of this committee. He's a well-known scientist who heads the Economic Health Alliance in New York. He was part of this committee. I will share some of those tweets with you on the screen. You can look at them. Now, there are many issues there. So, one of the issues is that this group has picked up evidence from the Wuhan market. Now, Wuhan market was emptied out and cleaned vigorously by Chinese authorities after the first outbreak. So, what evidence can be expected to be left there? This group believes, however, or they assert that people left in a hurry, and because they were living in a hurry, they left their utensils, their implements, everything behind. So they left a lot of evidence behind. So obviously that evidence is not available now, but they are looking at what samples the Chinese might have picked up from those utensils, etc. at that time. And based on that, they are saying that we don't believe that the virus first spread from the wet market. It may have come from elsewhere. Second thing, they say that they've not been able to identify an animal source, but looks like it was an animal source. So once again, it makes no one any wiser. And then of course, then they say that lab to human is very, very unlikely. But the Huanan wet market, as it's called in Wuhan, had something to do with this, and it could have come from domesticated wildlife products or domesticated wildlife which has been brought in from farms elsewhere in China. So this is a bit like a regular, have you ever read a Judicial Commission report in India? Usually 9 out of 10 Judicial Commission reports in India are like this. They say nothing. They look at all possibilities and they say this is likely, this is unlikely, but to find out more, either you have to conduct further inquiries or ideally give my commission an extension so my post-retirement job carries on for a couple more years. So this is a report a bit like that. In fact, one interesting feature I find there is a separate set of points made by the Chinese scientist, senior representative of the Chinese National Health Commission, Dr. Liang Wannian, who was also assisting this group or who was leading the Chinese group working with the WHO group. So he said that we looked at 5 things. One, zoonotic transmission, which means virus jumping from one animal to another animal. But he said it probably is zoonotic transmission, but we've not been able to identify the reservoir. That means where did it come from? Second, he says that it is true, it is quite clear that once it's jumped from animal to human, zoonotic transmission took place, it evolved greatly while being transmitted from human to human and to other animals. And we know this virus has had many mutants now. Right now, the world is worried about the South African mutant, the British mutant. So he said this virus evolved a great deal in the course of transmission. Then he says that bats and pangolins are reservoirs of coronaviruses. But he goes on to say that our studies show that those viruses show inadequate similarity with this COVID-19 virus. So by looking at those coronaviruses in bats and pangolins, we can't be sure that that is where this virus jumped from. Then he goes on to say something very interesting. He says that feline family, that is cats, could be a source of this virus. Now, we know that cats are part of the food chain in China as well. In many parts of the world, cats are part of the food chain. And you can say even big cats like tigers and lions, it's happened in the zoos, they can get infected with COVID-19. So he suggests, as his concluding point, that this could have come from the feline family, from one of the cats. And he said that, look, that's because, one, we have left the cats under-sampled and under-researched. In the quest for this, we've been looking at bats and pangolins. And second, he says, the cats actually are known to be massive reservoirs of these coronaviruses. So once again, what you have at the end of all this is a possible suspect, and that possible suspect is a mysterious cat that nobody knows anything about, and nobody has researched also right now. So back to square one. Thank you very much, WHO. 13 months after their first set of blunders, they are continuing to blunder. I don't think Biden will come back into the WHO, but I don't think it's going to reassure the Americans or any other part of the world that WHO really can be taken seriously. So what is the bottom line with this investigation and the report? Number one, we don't think it came out of the lab. Don't search anymore. We are not sure, but don't search anymore. Second, we know it came out of an animal. Third, but we don't know which animal. Fourth, because we don't have any answers, blame the cat. And fifth, which cat? We don't know. So what do? You can start now researching the cats. So I would say all of this right now brings no clarity at all. If anything, it actually adds more confusion, and it also raises doubts about the ability of those investigating. And finally, something we feel very good about. I know we don't feel good about wretched cricket, but we feel good about Parliament. Because see, what happens in Parliament is you see great repartee, you see grown-up people who do their politics together. They fight very hard in elections, in their public debates, speeches. Also, politics is sam dam dand bhed, you take no prisoners. But in Parliament, you have civilized conversations. That is what parliaments are for. You can even say the nastiest thing, the most cutting thing to the other side, but in a civilized way. The other thing is that leaders, when they work together for a long time, even if they are on the opposite sides of the aisle, they also develop a human equation, which means your rival does not have to be your enemy. So we saw an example today in this exchange between Ghulam Nabi Azad, the leader of the opposition in Rajya Sabha, Congress Party senior leader, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. This was the last session of Ghulam Nabi Azad because he is retiring. It doesn't look like Congress Party is giving him Rajya Sabha again. So Narendra Modi, while giving his tribute to Ghulam Nabi Azad, spoke very sentimentally and referred in particular to an incident of 25th May 2006 when Ghulam Nabi Azad was Chief Minister in Kashmir, and Modi was chief minister in Gujarat. So to that extent, they were on a par with each other. And he remembers how a bus of Gujarati tourists was bombed outside Nishad Garden, a Mughal garden, the well-known Mughal garden of Srinagar, and several Gujarati tourists had died. And how Ghulam Nabi Azad had met the families of these dead and injured tourists, and he had broken down. He started crying while talking to those tourists and their families. And while he was describing it, Narendra Modi himself started sobbing quite obviously and quite evidently in Parliament. Now, that was seen to be something of the kind that we do not see between rivals in today's politics. Then Ghulam Nabi Azad responded and he thanked Modi, but he also said that in my life I have cried only 5 times. What were these 5? These 5 times also tell you India's political history in some ways. He said 1, when Sanjay Gandhi got killed, 1980 I think. 2nd, when Mrs. Gandhi, Indira Gandhi got assassinated, that was 1984. 3rd, when Rajiv Gandhi got assassinated, that is 1991. 4th, when the tsunami came. And 5th, when he saw these bodies and these families. So this was one very touching moment, but don't miss politics there, because this is cut the clutter. The politics was because yesterday, in his motion of thanks to the president, when the Prime Minister talked about farm bills, etc., he also made a snide reference to 23 of the Congress party who had written that joint letter asking for changes and reforms in the party. Ghulam Nabi Azad is among the senior most members of that group of 23, and the fact that Narendra Modi today said that my doors are always open for you was seen to be as a loaded statement. So that kind of loaded statement comes with a postscript, watch this space. So that was the politics for the day.